regardless of species, we all have this desire to live a life free of fear, pain, and suffering. And if you can deliver that to somebody, that's amazing, you know?
Hello and welcome back to the show. My name is Nimai Delgado and I am your host of today's podcast. And I am, as always, I say this every time, but I really am excited for today's episode because I get to interview incredible people and just have so much fun with these conversations. And today's guest is going to be no exception. His name is Robert Cheeke. And Robert and I actually recorded an episode on my original podcast back in September of 2018. So definitely be sure to go have a listen to that episode because we go deep into Robert's story. We cover a whole list of different topics, and it'd be a good context for this episode in particular because a lot's changed since that conversation. But I'm going to go ahead and give you a brief intro of some of Robert's accomplishments. So first of all, Robert did grow up on a farm in Oregon where he adopted a vegan lifestyle in 1995. I was just 6 years old and Robert was 15. And today he is the author of the books Vegan Bodybuilding and Fitness, Shred It, Plant-Based Muscle, and the New York Times bestseller, The Plant-Based Athlete. A two-time natural bodybuilding champion, Robert tours the world sharing his story of transformation from a skinny farm kid to champion vegan bodybuilder. Robert is the founder of Vegan Bodybuilding and Fitness, an online community for vegan bodybuilders, and a regular contributor to Forks Over Knives and Vegan Strong. Robert, welcome back to the show, bro.
Nimai, so great to be here, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah, I'm excited to get into today's conversation because, like I said, last time we chatted on microphone was in September of 2018.
And what's crazy is that during that conversation, I was talking about this dream and desire to be a writer professionally.
Yeah.
And I had this quote, if only I had enough readers. And then here we are a few years later, making the New York Times list.
Yeah.
It was whether I manifested that on your show or it was a lifetime in the making, whatever the process was, I'm grateful for it.
I 100% believe that you did claim that back in 2018 and probably claimed it far before that.
Yeah.
But I really do think that speaking it into existence on that conversation and the belief that you had in yourself at that time and the unshakable belief that you have in yourself, it is an inevitability at that point. And here we are a few years later, 4 years later almost, and you are indeed a New York Times best-selling author. So I just want to say congratulations, man, because that's a really cool and inspiring story just to hear.
Thank you. And that was it was an emotional conversation we had. Yeah. It was heartfelt because I knew that's what I wanted to do. I knew that's what I had been working toward all those years. And I just knew it was in my future. I just needed the time, the discipline, the effort to put in. And I found that. I found that internally and the rest is history, I guess. The book has been just the greatest accomplishment to date, if you want to say.
Yeah. Let's talk about that because here is the book for those of you that are watching on video. It's an incredible read. It's really easy. It's essentially a manual for anybody that wants to adopt a plant-based lifestyle and is unsure of where to start, what to eat, what supplements you might need to take, or considerations on how to optimize what to eat based off of your sport, whatever that is. Robert has a history of bodybuilding. His co-author, Matt Frazier, has a history of marathon running. He's a runner. So regardless of what type of athlete you are, this is a really great read. And I would highly recommend it to anybody. So again, this is something that I wish I would have had whenever I first started as a vegan bodybuilder and did not know anything. When I started, I didn't really even know anything about macros or calorie expenditure or how much of what to eat and how to structure my meals for my goals. So this would have been really helpful.
Yeah.
Back then.
Well, and that's why I wrote it. I mean, that book was many years in the making.
Mhm.
I actually wrote the proposal for it in 2013. Almost got accepted by a publisher, didn't get accepted, and I had to go write some self-published books and prove myself more before I was ready for the bigger stage.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the help with the Game Changers, really putting the vegan lifestyle on the map for athletes was, huge for
Mhm.
the awareness of this kind of book. And the timing just seemed right. So 2018, 2019, got back to it.
Yeah.
And the idea behind this, Nimai, was to tell the compelling stories of the world's greatest plant-based athletes. And I know listeners are wondering, well, why isn't Nimai in there? And the short answer is that because the Game Changers was out,
Mhm.
I didn't want too many people, especially some of the stars or too many of the stars of that film in the book, because I didn't want people to say, oh, I've already heard that story.
Mhm.
I already know that. But of course, I still want to incorporate some Game Changers in there. And so there's just a handful. There's just a few. There's
Mhm.
James Wilkes, of course, who produced the Game Changers, his project. Longtime friends, Rip Esselstyn and Scott Jurek, and then Dotsie Bausch, who was the most helpful in the whole book writing process as far as introducing athletes that I wasn't connected to for me to
Mhm.
interview, especially a lot of Olympic athletes. So, so there were a ton of athletes that I could have featured.
Yeah.
You and Patrick Baboumian and so many others, but it had to be different. And it was so many years in the making that we had to make some decisions who's who's in, who's out. And also, quite frankly, Nimai, you were already like the world's most recognized vegan bodybuilder and one of the world's most recognized vegan athletes. But there are so many people who are world champions at what they do, Olympians, what they do,
Mhm.
plant-based athletes that don't have a big platform. They're just training for their Olympic sport all the time.
Mhm.
Like Andreas Wojta. Who's that? Well, he's a great Austrian Olympic runner. Sharon Feichman, she just competed in Tokyo and representing Canada in tennis. People don't know a lot of these people. Laura Klein, probably the best female duathlete in the world champion. A lot of people don't know who she is. And
Mhm.
Sonia Looney, world champion mountain biker, and numerous people who've been vegan since birth and still made it to the Olympics, became world champions, like Shonda and Kevin Hill, siblings who are amazing athletes out of Canada, who've been vegan since birth, and Jahina Malik, of course.
Mhm.
And so I just wanted to mention that, why is Nimai not in the book? Well, Nimai is a bona fide star already, and I wanted to tell some stories of those who are lesser known.
Well, you don't have to justify your reasons at all for not including me. I'm actually glad that you had that foresight of wanting to include and amplify other people's stories,
Yeah.
because like you said, I do have a platform and I can share my story to as all the people that are willing to listen, and I already have established like people. But many of these athletes are incredibly gifted and talented and world
Right.
champions at whatever sport they're competing in, but they don't have that same accessibility, or they don't have maybe the skill set to build a social media or the desire to build a social media. So I fully understand, and I'm glad that you did that, because it also is a testament to just who you are as a person, because you always want to lift everyone up around you, and it shows, because you're someone that really wears their heart on their sleeve, and
Yeah.
you're such a passionate and enthusiastic guy that, I mean, anybody that's listening to this episode, by the end of it, you'll get a good taste of that. But it shows how selfless you are, and I love that about you. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to invite you back on the show, to allow people to understand who you are, and just your hero's story, like your hero's journey of where you started
Yeah.
over 25 years ago in this sport of vegan bodybuilding, and being an early adopter
Yeah.
of this lifestyle, and just blazing your own path. And regardless of how hard you had to work for it, I mean, you're a hustler, you're a grinder. I know that because we talk all the time. But what can we unpack there for anybody that is an early adopter to anything? I mean, for many people, being plant-based, although now it's become a lot more mainstream, being plant-based, even in your own circle, can feel like an early adopter.
Yeah. So I think it comes down to, what do you want to accomplish? Like, why do it in the first place? Are you trying to make a name for yourself? Are you trying to make a
Mhm.
difference in the world around you? Are you trying to feel significant? Are you trying to be accepted by a community? Like, are you looking for like-minded people and looking for, essentially for new friends? Do you want to be a role model? for people? What drives you? I think that's the important question. And that's why, and I don't want to talk too much about the book, but that's why I wanted to feature people like Fiona Oakes, who set Guinness World Records and has been a plant-based athlete for 5 decades and was told she couldn't even run because she was born without a right kneecap in her knee. She's not even supposed to walk properly, and went on to set records in marathons. I want her story out there. Christine Vardaros, one of the early plant-based athletes, vegan athletes from more than 20 years ago, a professional cyclist out in Belgium. I wanted these stories out there. So that's part of the reason why I do what I do, is not just to amplify or promote my journey of gaining 100 pounds over the course of a more than 25-year vegan athlete journey, but if I have my own platform, which is writing these days, to share other people's stories, that's meaningful for me. So I think, I was an early adopter as far as being a vegan fitness writer. There was Brendan Brazier before me, and maybe a few others, and some since then, of course. And I was just trying to stay true to myself. Like, my story, that I've wanted to be a writer since I was in Mrs. Young's 3rd grade class in 1988. I stuck with that because that was meaningful for me. It just happened to be that veganism and bodybuilding was a vehicle for that. And I never let sight of that. I never let go of the sight of that. So, so I think the answer is, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How is that going to change your life? And what meaning does that change in life bring you? And then decide what to do, and be an early adopter, and whether it's social media or building a brand or creating a product or writing a book or making a film. What's the legacy, if you will, that pursuit is going to leave behind? And is that legacy, as you determine it, worth pursuing? Because it takes sacrifice, it takes discipline, it takes hard work, it takes maximizing the 1,440 minutes we have every day. It takes, as we talked about at the gym yesterday, a lot of those heartbeats, that we get 3 billion in our lifetime. And I've already used up half of mine, So it's like, how can we instill that inspiration in others who've got a lot of heartbeats left,
You're emotional. I can feel your emotion.
And I'm trying not to be, because I was last time I was on your show.
You can let it out, man. This is I want to see it. I want to understand what's the emotion behind that. I mean, what's underneath that? Because you are clearly very passionate about this, and I would love to understand what are those for you? Those things that you were just mentioning, understanding the reason why you're doing something, if it's to be an inspiration for others and really help others reclaim, their life or their purpose, their passion.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to something I used to say on tour. I've been on a speaking tour for 15 years now. And I don't know if you know this, I used to be on like a motivational speaking tour before even like the vegan fitness stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I was already vegan and I was already fit, but I was like on stage with David Wolf and these other people as like a motivational guy. And I'm laughing because I remember some of the things that I used to say and things I would yell from the stage. I wanted to be like a Tony Robbins kind of guy. And I used to say something like, there are billions of people who would give anything to be in your position. People around the world who just don't have the opportunities that we wake up to every day, as especially, as privileged white males in America. And I've been around the world, been to 30 countries. I've seen people suffering. And animals suffering. I've seen neglect. I've seen abuse. I've seen all these things. That's there. I mean, 2 billion people don't have enough food to eat. 700 million people live on less than $2 a day. So if I can inspire people to in whatever way be the best versions of themselves, to want to then do good in a true altruistic way, then that's part of it. And part of it was growing up on a farm and seeing some of that firsthand. I am someone who actually raised animals that had first names, then sold them at an auction to be turned into someone's food. I said goodbye. I broke that trust, right? Just like a dog. I'd call like a baby dairy calf by name and come running to me. And I said, it's time for you to go. Like, so I don't know if I'm like trying to make up for lost time, some of the things that I did that maybe I'm not proud of. But and I don't know if that's it. But I've just understood from a young age that being on a farm for 20 years, that regardless of species, we all have this desire to live a life free of fear, pain, and suffering. And if you can deliver that to somebody, that's amazing. So I think that's why I'm compelled, and that's why I get emotional, because it's a fragile thing. Life is short. It's challenging for most. Statistically, it's very challenging for most people around the world just to get through it. It's very challenging for animals, especially for many who are born into it, just to be held captive and turned into food. They're just bred into existence to live in captivity and then be a source of nourishment, if you will. It makes me want to do something.
Yeah.
And can one person change anything? I don't know. A lot of individuals have throughout history. A lot of them have.
Normally the ones that are crazy enough to think that they can, right? I think that's the old Steve Jobs quote.
Yeah, and they've done it in through medicine. They've done it through research. They've done it through goodwill. They've done it through being empathetic. They've done it through giving. They've done it through so many different ways. And that's, I guess, like that's what I aspire to do, but not in a way that validates my significance or that I need even attention for. I can't help it. It's like it's second nature. I don't know. Exactly where it comes from. I know. Yeah, I think part of it probably comes from my mom. She tends to be like empathetic. I think I get a lot of traits from her, including like she gets emotional watching a TV commercial. So I unfortunately got that as a public speaker, which impacts my ability to speak sometimes. But I think that's why I wear that heart on my sleeve, because it's been something that's been instilled in me for a long time. And it's that, like you and I talked about off camera, that effective altruism. What's the most good that I can do during the allotted time that I have? And why does it matter? Why not just look out for me? Why not just look out for number one? Why not just do everything that's in my own interest? Well, as I said just a little bit earlier, because there are billions of people who don't have that. They don't wake up to that opportunity. They don't have like choices to make, where they can, I'm going to pursue this in life or pursue this, or, very few people, Nimai, are in our positions where we get to truly follow our passions and actually get compensated for it and live a life of, in many ways, comfort, or at least physical comfort, and fulfillment and doing meaningful things. And I just recognize that not everyone has that opportunity. And so if I do, and I understand, I absolutely recognize my privilege as well, that I almost feel an obligation to do good or to help others. And that's why veganism fell into my lap so naturally. And that's why writing feels so good for me. And why I think that some of these stories that I'm able to share through my writing resonate with others. And then that creates this ripple effect where now someone else is inspired to go do something meaningful in their lives that maybe otherwise it wouldn't have resonated or wouldn't have clicked. And that's just been some feedback I've observed over the last 15 years doing this as a writer, speaker. And that's what compels me to, back to your original question, to be an early adopter in areas of deep interest.
Well, I just want to say thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate you having the vulnerability to go to that place on a podcast where it's recorded, because it's it's inspiring to see and hear you talk about how passionate you are about the thing that you care most about. And one can only hope to have that level of passion for anything, especially if it's also aligned to the type of person that you want to be and the type of impact that you want to make and the type of service that you want to have provide to the world, right? For the betterment of not just you, but for everyone around you, whether humans or non-humans,
Yeah.
right? Or this generation or future generation. So I just want to, say thank you. Thank you for going to that place because it's inspiring, man. And you mentioned,
Yeah.
you mentioned being a motivational speaker. And we talked about this even just before we were on air about how, you know, there are people that will naturally have more gifted abilities than others and
Sure.
have better communication skills or a better memory when it comes to like memorizing statistics
Yeah.
and things like that. And you and I, we talked about how I don't feel like that's a strength of mine to remember the percentage of land use versus the amount of calories it produces for like animal agriculture. Like those figures are somewhere rattling around in my
Yeah.
brain, but I prefer to share my message through stories because I feel like that can really relate to everybody. Like everybody can feel the power and see the power of a story. So
Yeah.
I feel like you have the gift of telling stories, which is obviously why you're a writer
Yeah.
and motivational speaker. But I think it's cool, man. I think that you are clearly living your path, and I know from my journey too of following a path that was misaligned and doing it for what I thought was the correct reasons, but it was coming from a place of lack. It wasn't coming from a place of authenticity. It was coming from a place of validation, from external acceptance, and my inability to give those things to myself took me on this path that was filled with suffering and pain and confusion and anxiety. And now I feel like after I kind of let go of a lot of um, those crutches and really became my own validation and doing things for me that felt good and felt right in my heart, then that is when I fully stepped into my power and ended up on the path that I'm on now, of really trying my best to make a difference in this world through my platform, through content creation, through coaching, through education, through all of these different modalities. But not everybody, or maybe people may be on that journey and trying to discover that for themselves.
Well, I think you made a good point there. You had some self-awareness of your initial motives, right? And maybe those weren't fulfilling you as much as you initially thought. I had the exact same thing. I like many of us, we get into weightlifting or to bodybuilding or some of these sports or activities that are focused on ourselves because we want the attention for ourselves. I used to want to be like the Tiger Woods of the vegan bodybuilding world back when Tiger Woods was the number one guy. uh, and and that carried a lot of weight because I was also trying to fill some sort of emptiness. And for me, it was significance. I wanted to be acknowledged. I wanted to be recognized. I wanted to feel like I had a place in the world. I wanted, and I talked to other friends growing up who that's why they joined the military. They wanted their life to matter. They wanted to represent something besides themselves, or people who become effective animal rights activists. They're trying to do something outside of themselves or bigger than themselves, or they have this switch that goes off that says, my motives are changed now. And I think bodybuilding is a pretty easy target because you're on stage flexing your muscles, displaying your physique, and it's it's an attention-seeking sport where you're literally judged based on how you look.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's easy to get caught up in that in bodybuilding. But as you know, most people, most bodybuilders, most individuals are so much more than just a bodybuilder. People are so much more than just a storyteller or just a writer or just a film producer or just fill in the blank, whatever they do. Doesn't matter what your job
Profession is, yeah.
career, or how you get compensated or how you pay your bills. Fill in that blank. You're not just that. You're so much more than that. And I think that is a message that can resonate with anyone. And I also wanted to mention, you and I talked about this a number of times, to get hung up on perfection or purity, because can be the great enemy of progress, whether on a small scale, individual progress, or on a large scale of social progress, when we're holding ourselves back or holding a community that we're part of back because we have to be perfect when nobody is, and nothing is. And to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
That I know you and I both struggle with perfectionism,
Mm-hmm.
but to let that go, you know, and to even maybe deliberately make some mistakes every now and then, not ones that have consequences for other people or for yourself, but little mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, make little mistakes that you become okay with it.
Yeah. To embrace them.
Yeah.
To embrace them and not just pretend that they don't happen, or in denial that you're imperfect. It's like that. Like you said, I also struggle with perfectionism quite a bit, and it's been a theme that I'm working on for the past uh, past year, definitely. But now more so, I feel a lot more comfortable talking about it, because before it was kind of something that was just dealt with internally. I have mental ping pong matches with myself for hours about what to do for a project or how to approach something, and then just like you said, it's the ultimate enemy of progress, because nothing gets done
Yeah.
ultimately. So
And if things don't get done, actions don't get taken,
yeah.
then that forward progress doesn't get made. Whether it's a New Year's resolution or a physique goal, a health goal, trying to improve an illness or disease or something we're fighting against, or trying to move our career forward, or a movement that we're part of forward, perfectionism will almost always hold us back. And it also may turn a lot of people away from it too. I can't be perfect like Nimai, or I can't be perfect like Robert in that area. I couldn't do it. And on a funny side note, I almost didn't get into writing, because when I was in third grade and I was so pumped about it, and I was writing all of these stories and they were getting laminated and spiral bound and becoming books, I was only 8 years old, but I couldn't get my cursive writing just right. And so I would take the marker and I would get frustrated and just scratch on the page. And I would try to draw my little pictures for the book, and I couldn't do it right. I'm not a very talented artist. I couldn't do it right. And I would, I don't want to do this anymore. But even in my adult life, I would find that. I mean, I scratched 200 pages from my recent book, Plant-Based Athlete. I've scratched hundreds of pages of other books that it wasn't perfect enough. And some of that matters when you're producing something of, obviously a New York Times bestseller versus a third grade book. But those things stuck with me, that I didn't even release my first book until I was 30. I started at 8. It took a long time. And I didn't make the bestseller list till I was in my 40s. I had to let go of some of these ideas of perfectionism. I mean, right now, the top review on Amazon is I don't know, like a 2 or 3 star review for my book. Now, granted, we average almost perfect 5 stars. But if I get hung up on that stuff, and say I'm never going to write again, people just give me 2 stars. And it's the highest, most helpful review, or people found most helpful on Amazon. That can deter me from even moving forward. Like if we act like the times we accidentally eat a piece of chicken in our burrito because someone made a mistake, or a piece of cheese that falls into burrito, which seems to happen like 98% of the time at a mainstream restaurant. That shouldn't stop us from still trying to stay on our path and make a difference, and care about what drives us, just because these little imperfection hiccups along the way. And to, like you said, embrace those, say that's part of life. And I've got a lot of heartbeats left in this life. I'm going to keep moving forward.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes that I often tell my clients whenever they're experiencing this pressure that they put on themselves to follow a fitness program, or a meal plan or anything like that. It just, they put so much pressure to be perfect, and if it's not exactly 2,752 calories, then they're a failure. And oftentimes what that leads to is just complete abandonment of the plan altogether. They'll ghost. I won't hear back from them, and I have to reach out, and I have to remind them that sometimes that like slipping up and giving up are two very different things. It's okay to slip up. Everybody slips up. But if you let that become your default, that every time you make a mistake, you give up, then you're not going to get to the level or the place that you want to be. And any professional, any expert will agree that you have to make those mistakes, and you actually value those mistakes because that's what's going to allow you to remember and to grow beyond them the next time. So embrace them, make them part of your plan to say, hey, life is it's not linear, on your path to success. There's going to be ups and downs.
Yeah.
And if you make it conditional and you say, have it like a conditional mentality where you say, once I accomplish this, then I'll be happy. Then whenever you make those mistakes, then your motivation will be conditional too, because it's attached to that condition. So if you can reframe that mentality and have just a committed mentality to say, I'm committed to working on my health, and I know that the results that I see are merely a beneficiary to my commitment.
Right.
That is a much healthier, more sustainable approach towards anything, because now you're doing it for you. I feel good about the commitment that I'm making because I know that I'm working on my body. And I know that if I continue to focus on this, then results are an inevitability.
And sometimes detaching yourself from that end result, so you can truly be present in the journey, in the process. You can still strive to, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get on stage someday, or I'm gonna be in the best shape of my life when I'm 40 or 50. It's a measurable thing. I'm going to become a bestseller. I'm gonna do whatever. But if you go through your journey and you don't get that, and that destroys you, then you miss the journey. You miss the journey itself.
Yeah.
And I walked a really tight rope because I was determined to make the New York Times bestseller list. I worried, what's going to happen to me if I don't? Is my writing career completely over?
Yeah.
Because can I pick myself back up? And you say, Robert, come on, that's a very privileged perspective. Even if you don't make the list, but you still write one of the best-selling books in America, isn't that something to be proud of? Yes, of course. But if you make that end result the end-all, be-all, I have to achieve this, or I don't know what I'm going to do with myself, I don't know how to get out of bed the next day, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Then you're in trouble. Not to say you don't shoot for that, but like you said, you embrace the journey itself. That 2,752 calories, I think you said, was part of that journey. But if you slip up, that's okay. But not to give up if it's super meaningful. But I also want to say this, which may sound counterintuitive, but I've written about it a little bit here and there, and I don't know if it was in magazine articles or books or whatever, but it's also okay to give up. If I tried to be, if I just gave everything that I had, everything in me, to be the next Nimai Delgado, and I'm just not doing it year after year after year after year, this just isn't working. I'm just not as popular. I'm not able to do the things he's doing. It's okay for me to walk away from that. That's no longer serving me. That's not a sustainable goal anymore. And there's a million examples, but, and I gave one of my favorite talks I ever gave was in Florida a few years ago. And it was exactly that. It was to a bunch of, it was a vegan leadership conference, a bunch of business professionals and leaders and people and a few big names and people who are professional speakers, best-selling authors, all this stuff. And I talked about being okay to walk away from and for me, it was talking about that I had so much passion, so much ambition in building a business around vegan bodybuilding that I founded it in 2002. I built a website. 2003, I toured the world, I had all this stuff. And I realized I'm just not cut out for business. It took me 20 years and falling on my face 20 times to learn that. But I said, I'm one of the best number 3 or 4s you'll ever see in a company. I just am. But I can't be the top guy. And I said, it hurts. to admit that. Like it hurts because if you've dedicated your life to it, but it's okay to throw in the towel at that time. Like it didn't work for 20 years. What makes you think it's going to work the next 10? But I was really good at doing other things, like writing. I got really good at that. I couldn't run a business to save my life. and people, I remember people coming up to me. It was one of the best talks I gave because they're like, man, that really hit me. Other people who were struggling, people who on the outside, their public image or persona is all success, but they were struggling on the inside. They were struggling in meaningful ways, struggling financially, struggling with self-acceptance, struggling among their peers, struggling in their job, having to work multiple 2, 3 jobs to keep up an image they had online. And some even, some perceivably successful people came up to me afterwards and like, man, that's what I needed to hear because I was spinning my wheels and didn't know that it was okay to give up because everyone says, don't give up, don't give up. And those are many of the famous quotes. We've already said it here today. Don't give up, don't give up. There's some great ones, whatever you do, just don't give up. But I argue that in some cases, some instances, one of the best things you can do is give up. And some people may not like that wording, say, well, okay, I'm going to pivot, or I'm going to transition, I'm going to pursue something else. But let's be real. Sometimes you need to give up something that's not serving you. You're just digging a hole of debt or digging a hole of frustration or of wanting or craving something that it's just not coming. Maybe you're just not cut out for it. You're not built for it. And that's okay. It really comes down to self-awareness. Some people are just entrepreneurial. They're great at business, but maybe their personality, they're not so good with relationships or whatever, but they're really good at one thing, or multiple things, but one thing in particular. Other people may be really good at building relationships, being likable and all this stuff, but they just don't know how to manage a business. Or some people, it may be someone's dream to write. And I get that a lot from a lot of people. Like, I want to be a writer too. And how'd you make all these lists and all this stuff? I want to be a writer, but they're just not any good at it. They show me their work and they're just not good. And it's hard to say that they're going to get markedly better. And maybe there's something else they can pursue that would bring meaning. They're just not going to. It reminds me, I say this among my friends from growing up. It reminds me of this. And we all know somebody like this. So I was on the cross country team, right? In high school, the number 2 ranked cross country team in the state of Oregon. I was a pretty fast runner. And there was a friend of ours who loved running. He just loved it. He loved it so much, but he wasn't any good at it. He was just terrible. And so that's okay because he's getting fulfillment out of it. And I don't remember talking to him what his aspirations were. But if his aspirations were to be in the Olympics or to be a collegiate athlete or, even to make the varsity team, that was going to leave him unfulfilled and frustrated. He loved running. He wasn't any good at it. And so you find another way to, do it as recreation, just for you, without trying to be competitive or try to be the best in your city or the state or the school, but do it for you. So I think looking at some of those ambitions and things that inspire us and a little bit of that self-awareness of, is this something that I'm going to be really great at it? Or is this something I can be okay at and feel really good about? Because I just like doing it. Like me playing basketball, I'm not that good, but I love it. So I'm going to keep doing it, but I'm not going to have aspirations of finding great success at it. I just get enjoyment out of it. And that's enough for me.
I think that's a great point to, most, regardless of what the reason is for why you want to do something, we often get pulled in directions that really excite us, that really give us that fulfillment. And sometimes it doesn't mean that you have to be the best in class. It's like, if it's fulfilling to you and you're passionate about it and you just enjoy doing it for the sake of just for the sake of enjoyment, then sometimes that's enough.
Yeah.
Sometimes that is all you need. You don't have to become the next Tiger Woods or the next Tom Brady or the next top 0.0001% of people who do the thing that you do. You can just do it in your own way. And that's great. That's great. I think that what you talked about earlier about pivoting too is something that it's it's a great point to bring up, because sometimes when people think of pivots, it can feel like it's a completely new direction that they have to take. Like, you were doing this one particular task, or you were pursuing a particular career in a field, and then all of a sudden you realize that, hey, this isn't for me. Like, now what? Like, but I got to start over in something else and start from ground zero. But that process of, first of all, getting the self-awareness of that is such a valuable lesson to learn. So it's not a failure. You never like failed at anything. You actually learned a lot about yourself, and there's always transferable skills for whatever thing that you're doing, because you can apply that, and now you can step or move from a place of more heart-centeredness. And if you constantly live your life in that way, then whatever you decide to pursue, you're going to be successful at it. For example, whenever I was in engineering, and I made the pivot from engineering to entrepreneur and fitness coach, like, that was it. Those two fields, like, I didn't study anatomy, I didn't study nutrition, I didn't study any of that stuff in college. And I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know how to hire. I didn't know how to pay taxes. I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. And because that driving force for me was because I really, really enjoyed it. And I really believed in the work that I was doing. It was just a matter of time before I figured it out and asked for support, or whatever ways that allowed me to accomplish the thing that I was going for. But I took all of the experience that I had, problem solving from engineering, I'm just using this as an example, and applying it to this new field and bringing this unique perspective into that field that maybe not everybody uses as an approach. So now I could use this different approach to fitness and look at it systematically, and see how I could optimize these systems within our body, and look at food as fuel, and look at how to optimize that and apply those same skills that I had learned in engineering. So I think that's I don't consider my time as an engineer to be a failure. I look at it as more as a necessary part of my journey to become this more aligned version of myself in this life that I have now.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, it kind of goes without saying, but many of us pursue passions that our skill sets don't really match up with.
Yeah.
Like me
Yeah.
wanting to be in the NBA when I was a kid. It wasn't really going to happen, but it was really fun to believe for at least a period of time I thought I could. But as adults, and as we're functioning in the world around us, one of the easy things to do is to find somebody with complementary skills and collaborate with them. If you're really not good at one aspect of this, whatever it is, whatever your pursuit, brand, business, sports, fitness, health, whatever, partnering or collaborating with someone who has that skill set.
Yeah, and enjoys it too.
And
'Cause
enjoy it.
That's a big one too, is
Yeah.
that they actually like what they're doing, and
Right.
they're not like doing a job that they hate. Because like that's a very important lesson that I had to learn as an entrepreneur too. Is like, I wanted to make these brands and stuff, but I'm not like, I don't want to be a graphic designer to do all the iterations of logo design,
Right.
and what are they called, like lookbooks for different branding and stuff like that. I don't want to do that. I just want to like focus on the things that I like to do, and just be in my area of mastery and expertise, and let somebody else that really enjoys that to find that person, whether it's part of your business or hire them or seek help,
But also not to let enthusiasm get in the way of self-awareness. Like me with vegan bodybuilding. I was hell-bent on being entrepreneur, CEO. I remember being in my 20s, like, when would that have been? Early 2000s, buying business books and being really into all that kind of stuff. But just not knowing how to do it. Like, even after reading and learning and following gurus and all this stuff, where my enthusiasm for what I love to do took me down a path that wasn't successful. Because I was so enthusiastic. I was blinded by my own lack of self-awareness.
But by what, like, success by what metric?
Yeah, mostly financially, I think.
Okay, yeah. I think that's a common measure of success for most people.
What are these stats we both were like trying to remember? What is it that it takes 5 years or something for most companies to turn a profit.
Yeah.
30% don't make it past the first couple of years. 70% don't make it past 10 years or whatever. Business is hard. Building a brand is hard. Building, a company or working for yourself is hard. And yeah, I guess I use that as finances as a metric. I mean, there are a lot of other positive byproducts, traveling the world, seeing so many exotic places, making a difference in other people's lives. I mean, literally, it's so crazy. It's almost in a selfish way. It's like a dream come true. I would be on tour somewhere and people would just be shouting, you changed my life. Like, that's like, man, does it get any better than that? So I had some of those experiences, but my enthusiasm got in the way of the financial success, because I was so, and this is just true. I cared so much about the end result in my pursuit that I just gave everything away.
Yeah.
To this day, go ask my wife right now. Go text her, go call her.
I don't have her number.
She will say, she will say, one of her biggest criticisms of me is that Robert gives everything away, because now it's like half is hers too, right? So she hates that. I just give away my books. I just give away, I used to order like sometimes $10,000 worth of vegan bodybuilding t-shirts, put it on a credit card. I'd sell some. I sell a bunch on tour, but I just gave them away. I couldn't help it. I just wanted to. And so that's where I think self-awareness and enthusiasm sometimes needs to be called into check, because there's some other benefits in all this, but I also compromised my home situation, right? So is mortgage going to get paid or not? And it's oftentimes a direct result of Robert's enthusiasm to hope that down the road, maybe this will pay off. This, giving away of all this stuff, or giving of my time, or giving of my energy. Maybe it's reciprocated, but I can tell you right now, that's rarely the case. And it's also, I don't think it's responsible from my perspective to expect that, right? Anytime you give with expecting something in return, even if it's just something fairly meaningless like a t-shirt or a product or a book, you're setting yourself up for disappointment, and your motive is in the wrong place. And so I had this idea as a trying to be business person, entrepreneur, that if I just give everything, get my brand out there to everybody, it will come back to me. That didn't happen, and I had to learn that. Like every few years, I had to relearn that. And it's finally starting to stick now, where I realize that I'm a really good storyteller. I think I'm a decent writer, and as we talked about in 2018 on this podcast, that's where I feel like I can do the most good. It just is. It's not Instagram. It's not YouTube. I'm not great on video. I'm not comfortable often on video. I'm not real savvy with technology and smartphones and Instagram and all this stuff. But if I can just get a big enough audience for things like this book, that's where I think I make a difference. And if people can figure that out for themselves, man, I think a lot of opportunities open up.
And I would like also add to your story too, that you are like a hustler. Like you're consistent. Like you're consistent as fuck with everything you do. So I think that is like a very transferable skill for writing, especially, right? Because how many people meet you and tell you that they want to write a book, right? And then what's your advice to somebody that wants to do that?
Well, it's the advice I got from the guy named David. His last name's hard to pronounce. David Slike, I think. He's I think he just retired, but he was the president of a naturopathic college in Portland, Oregon, where he was like trying to recruit me to be becoming a naturopathic doctor, because I was so into veganism and health and helping other people. And I don't know if I told the story with you before or not, but basically the short version of it is that I was telling him, oh no, I'm not here for naturopathic medicine school. I'm going to be an author someday. This is before I'd written anything. And he said, well, how's that coming along? I said, oh, it's coming. I'm working at it. Said, what do you mean? What do you mean you're working at it? I said, oh, I'm writing some stuff. And he said, well, how far has that gotten you? I'm like, well, I'm still working on it when I'm not doing my website or when I'm not, running around for working for Vega. And that's when he said, Robert, what I want you to do is write 2 pages every day. I don't care if it's good. I don't care if it's bad. You write 2 pages every day, and soon you've written a book. And I was like, makes sense to me. Like I said, president of university, I might be onto something here. I went home, I wrote 2 pages. A few days later, I wrote 10 in one day. Another day, I wrote 20. Another day, 30 in a single day. Like, I can't even be interrupted. I'm just so into it. I don't even need to eat, go to the bathroom, anything. I'm so in love with what I'm doing. I want to do this. And yeah, I wrote a book, that vegan bodybuilding book. I wrote it in like 4 days, hundreds of pages, essentially. And I had to go back and edit it and add more things.
Yeah.
But it was that commitment to writing 2 pages every day. And so I equate that now, just recently in my talks, just post-pandemic or during pandemic, when I've started to give lectures again, when the new book came out, I talk about that. What's your 2 pages every day? Because I was already doing other things. I did over 100 push-ups and 200 crunches every day for 739 consecutive days, never missing a day for, what is that? What's the math on that? 2 years until I just forgot one day. And then had to start over. Went for another 101 days, forgot. And went another 400 something days, forgot. But that had nothing to do with building my chest or abdominal muscles, even though I was a bodybuilder then or still into it. It had everything to do with building discipline and consistency and patterns. And there's a reason why I've published a bunch of books now, and that my self-published books were some of the most popular in the country. Because of that hustle. That's why I'm out here. I'm visiting 10 bookstores a day because most authors sit at home, already been successful, already made the big list, already have all those international translations, #1 international bestseller, New York Times bestseller. I can't wait to get out there, and I'm going to these little tiny independent bookstores and signing books for them. I'm going to big ones like Barnes & Noble. I'm signing books, and that's where I feel alive. And that if you want to call it hustle, you want to call it grind or whatever, it's never stopped to the point that I thought maybe it was destructive for me because I was addicted to it. I couldn't stop. And other people in my life could see it in me. And you look back at these like Facebook posts where I'm like, I've been up for 27 hours straight and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm on another flight to go do that. Like I was just obsessed. And I was an early adopter I was one of the first people to really meet Gary Vaynerchuk when Crush It came out in 2009. I have all these photos of me and Gary in Portland and Seattle and Raleigh and Austin. And I really resonated with his message of hustle and grind, and I couldn't stop. And yes, it's paid some amazing dividends. I mean, some of the best times of my life as a result of that. But it's also set an expectation that, again, is very hard.
Yeah.
Not only for me to live up to professionally, but where's my time to spend, with my wife, with my family, with my nieces, my nephews, my parents, my siblings? That dwindled significantly. People want to talk about work-life balance and all that, and that's different for every person, 100%, based on what your real priorities are. I mean, that has to be. I mean, I remember watching other people, their work-life balance was so different, and some went on to sell companies for hundreds of millions of dollars, some of my friends, and then created a whole new life for themselves and their family after they put in X years of dedication. But they, that there was struggle, there was suffering going on in those families as well, because people weren't always around and all of that. And so I think, though I appreciate that, and I recognize my role as someone who hustles in our industry is, I don't know. I can't think of many others who dedicate that number of minutes, that number of hours continuously for years or even decades on end. Some people are way more successful in a much shorter amount of time. But I've often said that I don't know many people who've worked more hours over the last 20, 25 years than I have. And I don't say that with pride necessarily, because it's been challenging for me to maintain relationships, friendships, relationships with family. That's been hard. And I've been rethinking some of that stuff recently.
Do you feel like it's coming off the back end of you actually getting the thing that you wanted so badly for so many years. And like it's given you a different perspective of what, I mean, does it feel different? Like now that you're a New York Times bestselling author compared to the idea of it for so long?
That's a very good question, and I have multiple answers, but and one I know I'm going to get emotional. I just know I will. I don't know necessarily. I think part of it. I remember telling some of my childhood friends, my book is ranked number 15 of all books on Amazon. I mean, it's ahead of everybody. You know, ahead of Dr. Seuss, ahead of John Grisham, ahead of Barack Obama. It's ahead of everybody except for James Patterson and a few others. We're ahead of Stephen King. We're ahead of all these authors. And, actually, this conversation was with Sonia Looney, who's in the book. She was interviewing me for a podcast or something. And this particular conversation, as I recall, and she's like, how does it feel? And I said, well, there's still 14 books ahead of us. So I wasn't totally satisfied. Again, that could come from this. I don't want to sound like it's coming from this ego perspective or whatever, but I knew I still had more that I could achieve. And then this is the conversation with my childhood friend was, I told my one of my best friends, I made the New York Times list and all that. And he said, what's next? Like that was his immediate, because he knew that I'm obsessive. He knew that I'm one of the most, because he's known me since I was a kid, right? Yeah. So he knows the go-getterness in me that just can't be released. It's just always intrinsic and inherent within me. So here I was, instead of saying like, congratulations or, well done, I know you've worked at that for 33 years. He just said, what's next? And that was like, it was a snapshot of how some people perceive me. And the part that, I wasn't going to talk about it, but the part that I will get emotional is that a lot of change in my perspective was, I don't know if you know this, but my best friend passed away in September from COVID. A friend I talk to every single week, a friend I've known since middle school. I was best man at his wedding. He was at my wedding. He wasn't in the vegan community, so I didn't post a lot of photos. People didn't know, but we talked every single week for years. I'm the godparent for his kids. Unfortunately, he had some underlying conditions. COVID entered his household. He was already isolated at home with a bulging disc in his back. So he was isolated with COVID. He got progressively worse. I had a flight booked for his birthday, October 15th, which I still kept. He unfortunately passed September 17th. I talked to him on Wednesday, and he passed Friday morning. A day and a half later, I did text with him Thursday, and he said he was getting better, but he never did. When that happened, I never lost someone that close to me that meant so much, that I'd known my whole life, and we did so much together that, you can take away all that New York Times stuff and everything else to still have your friend around, you trade that in a second. And that's where I actually stopped hustling a bit. And I've gone back to Oregon, where I'm from, multiple times. I spent time with my friend's wife and 3 kids, of course, immediately after he passed. Met up with his parents recently. We took it very, very hard. He was only 41, my age, went to school together. Met with his sister. Meeting with his mom was the most difficult, actually. That was very hard. But that changed my perspective, and it reminded me of other things that made me think about changing, but didn't. Like, I live in Colorado now. My brother lives nearby, about an hour away. I rarely see him, and his wife and 2 kids. And the kids adore their Uncle Robert, and I adore them. But I've been writing a book for a couple years. We just moved back to Colorado. We're We've been there for 2 years now. And I remember something that stuck with me. And this could be for anybody who is thinking about priorities right now in their own life and maybe what this means to them. And I remember I'm just always working. Whether it's on my phone or my laptop, and just always like I have to be hustling all the time. I'm addicted to it. And my little 5-year-old nephew Charlie, I remember him saying, coming up for I think for Thanksgiving, he's like, "Robert, it's okay to stop working and play with us." I thought, God, you know, like who have I become? You know, who have I become because of this pursuit? And then when my best friend from growing up, my best friend Josh passed away, that did it for me. And so I've been spending time with my parents, my siblings, and I know this isn't super related to your question, but it also is. I didn't lighten up just because I made the New York Times list. I was still absolutely driven. I took a break when I had significant changes in my personal life with my friends passing. It's been difficult for me. It really has been. And so now that was in September, we're now in mid-January here recording. You know, time is allowing me to feel a little bit better, and then also embrace what I know my friend Josh loved about what I did, which was, you know, pursue my own dreams. You know, he wasn't vegan at all, like totally not vegan, but he was the first one there to go buy my book at Barnes & Noble the day before it came out. He went there the night before on Monday and bought it. And, you know, I feel like he'd be really proud that I'm out here in Hollywood. I'm out here hustling. I'm on a major podcast. I'm visiting bookstores. I texted you last night that had my book in the window in downtown Santa Monica. Like I'm living my best life. And my best friend doesn't get to live his anymore. So that's impacted how I see things. And that's real for a lot of people. I mean, I'm fortunate that's the first person that close to me that I've lost. You know, but it does change your perspective. And so I am trying to scale back and be there for family and be there for all these important moments. And then do things like this, going out and visiting bookstores. That's just super meaningful.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, I've been texting my wife this whole time, I'm living my best life. And I never said that before.
Yeah.
I never said that before. But to be able to say it now is like, that's as good as it gets.
Man.
You know?
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing that story for us, man.
I didn't plan to. And I've only shared it a couple times. I mean, I wrote this 4-page tribute online, and then I did mention it on stage when I was speaking a couple times recently, just about, you know, embracing health and wellness and the decisions we can make to control our own health. Because like he had a bunch of underlying conditions that it made it really, really difficult if he were to get a serious virus or illness for him to, you know, get through it. And that's exactly what happened. And so it's difficult.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't plan on being as emotional or as vulnerable, but as my friend Adam Sudd said, it says many times, you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Here I'm sweating and, you know, trying to get through that. But it's real, and it shaped the way that I view my current life right now. And I don't prioritize, you know, I'm not in that great shape right now. I'm not prioritizing the gym when I have other things to, again, kind of almost like make up for lost time.
Yeah.
To go prioritize, like with family. I can't wait till my next trip to Oregon. And not to continue on this too much longer, but just one last thing. Right after my friend passed, his son was turning 18 on in December, mid-December, and I was back there in October, and I decided, you know, I'm going to go out there for his 18th and surprise him. And I did it in such a fun way, you know, where I was like outside their house and called, just, I just wanted to wish happy birthday. You know, Karen's here with me, and we're kind of pretending we're calling from Colorado, and had a bunch of gifts and balloons and all this stuff. And what are you doing today? Made sure he was home, you know, and then showed up. Their mom knew I was coming. My friend's wife knew I was coming, but the kids didn't know. And so, and then we just treated them to just unbelievable night of bowling and arcade video games and gifts and all this stuff. And, because their dad couldn't be there. And like, I love that stuff. Like that's what I want to do,
For sure, man.
And that's the altruism in personal relationships, which is part of my altruism with how can I do the most good with my veganism or with my writing or whatever. It took a very unfortunate event for me to shift some priorities in my personal life, but that's what I've embraced, and it's been eye opening too, to see the person who I was in the eyes of other people. Like, because you get to a point where, Robert's a longtime friend, but he's too busy. I'm not even gonna reach out to him. Mm-hmm. Where as popular as I became as a vegan athlete, I'd have like two people text me.
Yeah, the lonelier you became.
Right. I had two people text me Merry Christmas, and one was my friend who passed, because Robert's too busy. Don't bother him. He's always working on a project.
Yeah.
Do I want to be that guy anymore? Does my family want me to be that guy? Does my wife want me to be that guy?
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful story that you told, and realization that you came to after, working so hard for the things that you want, and then almost getting lost in that pursuit when it is attached so deeply. I know that we're doing it exclusively for that, but there is an element of the end goal there, and the sacrifices that you end up making on behalf of something that is great. It's a great accomplishment, and you have that for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But then sometimes you can lose sight of the other things that really matter to you, mm-hmm. and the things that really deeply affect, who you are, and having that balance and self-reflection. Sometimes you have the luxury of having the self-reflection and making those changes on your own. And sometimes a life event comes around and kind of forces you to take a look at yourself and what you're doing and how you're spending your time and energy. And like you said, we have a finite amount of heartbeats in our lifetime. And how are we using each one of those? Are we using it to chase something that at the end of the day is a piece of paper? Is it a few letters to attach to the end of your name? Is it, is it a title? Is it the recognition? And then you lose sight of the other things that really you deeply care about, but it's just lost in the weeds of the hustle, of the grind, because we have these blinders on. So yeah, man, thank you a lot for sharing that story. I think that anybody will be able to relate to that. And it takes a level of vulnerability, which we need more of this day and age on platforms like this, of heart-centered, strong, masculine guys who are fully embodied and in touch with their emotions, to be courageous enough to share what they're feeling and not, put this hard exterior that we're so used to seeing online, because that creates this distorted image of what the people you're really trying to reach, like how they view you, how they see you, and how they feel they should maybe act as well. So I think this only invites more of that vulnerability and gives people permission to be more comfortable and share how they're really feeling. And that's inspiring in itself, because that unlocks so much more freedom on the other side of that, and not having to feel so isolated with what you're feeling and experiencing. And thank you for that. I just want to say that.
Well, thank you for letting me share. I didn't plan to, for the record. And also, I think it might give some perspective of judgment, of like right now, of judgment we have of others. Like, for example, I post a lot about my book on social media right now because I'm enthusiastic about that. But that's because I'm also hurting, like I'm posting like my best stuff because I'm also hurting and healing, right? And so like people think, oh, look at this, ego guy who won't shut up about his book or whatever. But that's my form of like healing. So sometimes we say like, God, these people on social media that just post all these, especially bodybuilders and fitness models, just posting all these photos, but they're going through something. Mm-hmm. Or even if they're not going through something, that's their form of art or what they care about or what they're doing. It's that's their means to a movie role or a book deal or whatever. Like my buddy I saw in the gym yesterday, IFBB pro bodybuilder. What are you doing these days? He's in all kinds of movies. He's in movies and commercials. He's got red carpet coming up, whatever. Bodybuilding was a vehicle for that. You could look at him and say, oh, this guy is full of muscle and veins and, good looking guy, representing his state of Nebraska and doing his thing, but that was means to do something more meaningful. And I got to say, like, for me, with all the stuff that transpired, one of the first things I did was when I got, after these couple trips to Oregon, I come back, I would do these 3-hour, 3-hour round trip drives down to Denver, or actually south of that, Parker, to go watch my now 6-year-old nephew play soccer. For a little, he only plays like 10 minutes of the game, indoor soccer, but I drive 3 hours round trip each weekend because, like, that's, I know that's going to mean something to him, and it means something to me. And it took, like I said, it took some of those awkward conversations, including with my nephew, saying, "Are you able to play with me? Are you able to play with us? Can you get off your computer and let's go play something?" For me to actually do it, and then of course my friend and his unfortunate ending turned my world upside down, and like that really changed perspectives, and then reflecting on a lot of those things, including, like I said, reflecting on the person who I've been and how people have perceived me, and just on like a quantifiable thing. I told you I would get like 2 texts on Christmas or something this Christmas, and I'm only thinking of this on the spot. This Christmas, I texted 95 different friends from my phone, like a little Merry Christmas thing, and then New Year for some others. You were on that list too. I texted you.
I remember.
But that's because I'm a different person now. And I just, and you'd be surprised. Some of those people I hadn't reached out to in years, but it meant something to them, which in turn meant something to me, and already just this time I've only been in LA for a few days, and I'm like, I didn't tell anyone I was coming except for you, actually. You're the first and only person I told I was coming here. And then I bumped into Brendan Brazier, who I've known forever, 15 years, and he was a longtime close friend. And I don't know, it just felt good. And then just seeing my friend Sean, I hadn't seen in 5 years since the Olympia of 2016 when he competed. Like, I don't know.
It's different.
It feels good different to be like, I'm around, I'm present, I'm around friends, and I'm still doing my business stuff. I'm still signing books, and I'm feeling alive and all this stuff, but I just feel different now.
Well,
I don't know if that makes sense, but
it does. But
I feel, I've been using these words. I've used words I haven't used in a long time. Rejuvenated. I feel alive. I feel, because before that it was burden, it was pressure, it was expectation. Burned out. I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And then I was like, then you start thinking about like, well, should I just quit everything then? Like people do with their fitness, people do with their health. I started eating worse, more poorly. I'd already been like in my best shape before the Rich Roll podcast. I'm like, well, I've already done that. Now I was starting to get a little bit out of shape because I would sit at home and eat not as healthy as I probably should be eating. But I was also going through some stuff, and that was indicative and a reflection of my actions. And to realize that every single person that you judge or that I judge, oh, how come they're not in the shape they should be in? Or how come they don't have the eating habits they should have? I mean, they've read the books, they've watched the documentaries. What's wrong with them? There's something else there that we don't know. We don't know anything about what someone else is going through. We don't have a clue up here and here, what they're going through these areas. We don't know. And so being compassionate and accepting even people who have habits we don't really like, unless they're really destructive habits, trying to, encourage them to do something different. But realize people are going through some stuff, especially the last couple of years with this raging pandemic and isolation. And the reason these few days have been refreshing for me is because I've already noticed like a bad pattern that I have. I moved to this town, Fort Collins, Colorado, where my wife is, she's not really from. She's from Southern Colorado, but she went to school there. She worked for the university for 6 years. Now she's back working for the university for 2 years. It's basically her hometown. It's where all her friends are, her college friends, her childhood friends, who also went up to that university and now live there. But I found myself almost like bragging that I don't have a single friend there, wanting people to say, "Oh, poor Robert," or feel bad for me. I've said it so many times. I don't have a single friend there. And I realized I didn't think I needed it. I said, I don't need it, you know? I tour, you know, Vegan Strong, and I'm with Danny and Giacomo and Ryan and a lot of my best friends at these events, but those events stopped. I had no social life whatsoever, nothing for 2 years, you know, except for some of my wife's friends. And I'm, you know, kind of friends with some of them, but they're not like, we never hang out together, just me and that friend. They're only with my wife too. And then going through this life-changing event, I realized, man, and then going and seeing all my old high school friends who are mutual friends with that friend too, is like, man, I really do need a community. I really do need.
It's important. It's important to have that support system and that community. And sometimes we lose sight of that. Sometimes we really do.
And I just thought I didn't need it. Like, I can handle myself.
Yeah, we're relational beings. We need support. We need community. We need that. It's one of our like basic needs. Yeah. So if anybody out there is feeling that same type of burnout, maybe this is seems like a great theme of this podcast, is to really take a moment and self-reflect and see where your priorities are and where you're giving your energy. No, I really enjoy hearing you talk and hearing your self-revelations, because it's relatable, man. And you are a very relatable guy, and you wear your heart on your sleeve, and you're enthusiastic and you're passionate, and you've got such a great essence about you that is felt by anyone that comes in contact with you. So I think that it's going to translate here on video and on audio for anybody that's listening. So I just want to say, like, thank you, man, for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing your insight and your experience and being as vulnerable as you were, and getting emotional, because like I said, we need more of that. And that in itself is creating ripple effects in this world. So even if it's not through your writing per se, it's through the essence of who you are. So thank you, Robert, for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks, Nimai. It's really an honor. I mean, the second appearance here, it was something that I was really looking forward to, and also quite a bit nervous about and anxious about. But now that that's
it's over with.
I can settle into the rest of my next few days here in Southern California.
Awesome,
with ease.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And if you're looking to follow Robert, I'll link all of his social media down below. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, leave a comment, let us know what you thought. Let us know if you want to hear more from Robert. And if you are interested in getting some really great literature on plant-based diets, on how to be a plant-based athlete and how to transition to that lifestyle, I highly recommend this book. I'll link it below too. And as always, thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate you, and sending you all lots of love and light.